is Suleiman Yusuf Sada, and together all I would like to welcome you to this CAAP 2020 Cohort Climate Webinar for FCT ABUJA. Ms. Victoria, please help us share the screen. And before we go further, I would like to introduce our, first of all, I would like to thank SDSN and CAAP for giving us this opportunity to organize this webinar and helping us all along the way. I'd like to introduce our speakers.
There's something weird about this event.
Can you guys hear me?
Called it up, and he won't do anything, and he's not sure who gains from it.
Who's speaking? Is
I can be your eyes
on?
There's none. Because I won't expose you. Maybe I know, so you are working with us.
I don't know. Can you mute the people that are not speaking and okay.
Let me help you, Annie. You can't see much of what happens on the coast. And really, what could happen?
Please, Mr. Can you unmute your mic? Okay. I hope you can hear me now. I should continue, right? I want to know if you are. Okay. I can see Ms. Victoria is trying to share the screen now. First of all, I would like to appreciate our guest speakers that took the time out of their precious schedule and try to be here with us right now. Our first speaker would be Mr. Ali Abbas, who is an aviator, studied from the University of Oxford, a fellow Said Business School, community organizer, and a global youth advisor. She's sharing the screen, and I'm not seeing anything so far. Our second speaker would be Mr. Aziz Abubakar, a sustainability project manager and consultant, founder, CEO, Sustainable Solutions for Green Growth, a certified lead green associate and global citizen fellow, winner of 2022 World Bank Group Youth Summit Case Challenge. So we'll start with our first speaker, that is Mr. Ali Abbas, the aviator who studied from the University of Oxford. He'll be presenting his part now. Am I seeing the screen so far? Ms. Victoria, have you shared the screen? I think we have technical issues there.
Hi.
Ms. Victoria, we can't see your screen. If it's not possible, can you please, Mr. Abbas, please just share his screen directly? Because it seems there's a technical problem.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe it's a bit heavy. Okay. Okay, Mr. Ali Abbas, we can see you now. We are trying to share the screen.
Okay. Hello everyone. I tried sharing from my own side and it's telling me that only the host can share. So maybe that's one of the reason why she's finding it hard to share from her own side.
Okay. Ms. Victoria, what is happening there? Wow.
What's the wrong?
Let me try to reshare it from my side and see if it's good. Try this a bit here.
Is there a chance I can share from here?
Yeah, try sharing from there.
Okay, it's still telling me only the host can share. I don't know if you can check your settings.
Yeah, someone should make him host. I can't do that, but I think.
Okay.
Meeting settings. Miss Halima. Halima.
Yes, I can't actually share his slides because
I mean,
I'm
can you try to
using
make
my
him
phone.
host?
Yeah, I've texted management so they can make him host. I can't make him host.
So he can share. Yeah, they're supposed to. I think they are here with us right now.
Hello, good morning, guys. Suleiman, can you please make me the host so that I can share? Hello, can you hear me?
Who's speaking? Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, can you please make me the host so that I can share my screen? Good morning.
Okay, I bet they are hearing us. I'm not the one who's supposed to control that settings. So I bet they are hearing us. The SDS. Please, can you help us?
Maybe if it's possible to save time, you can just do it without presenting the slide. I don't know.
Yeah, I believe we can start because we can't just be waiting while people are here. Yes, sir. You can go ahead.
Okay.
we are with you, sir.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. I am glad to be here. My name is Ali Abbas. I am an aviator, like the host mentioned. I am also a fellow and from the School of Science Business School, University of Oxford. And I'm also a community organizer with Yaga Africa, and I've done a lot of volunteerism work through the impact of climate change and actors. And today I'll be presenting to you a slide about understanding climate change and climate action. So before I go further, I don't know if I can ask the question, when you think about climate change and climate action, what comes to your mind? You can send in your answers to the group chat. Okay. Before we proceed, I'll be as fast as I can to help save time. Awesome. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I asked the question, what do you think about when you hear about climate action and climate change?
I believe we can say when there
Just want to hear or engage the participants. Want to see answers on the chat box.
Yes, everyone can type their answers on the chat box. Okay. Can I just type one? It says long-term change in temperature and weather pattern.
Yes, I can see that long-term change in temperature and weather pattern. Yeah, true.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Miss Ali Abbas, we can't hear you anymore. I think your mic is muted.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, my mic wasn't muted. Okay. Okay, so I say today I'll be covering the topics, the introduction to climate change, and also climate change overview, where we understand the impact of climate change in our society and environment, and also the solutions, which is the climate change mitigations, and then what we can do as humans to help solve the climate change issues. So the basic approach towards climate change is to understand it wherever it is occurring, whether it's environment or however you want to apply towards it as an actor, climate change actor. And climate change has been identified as a leading human and environmental crisis on the 21st century. Already, we know that thousands of people are currently suffering from the catastrophic impact of the climate change. And on agricultural production and also on food security in our country and other parts of Africa as well. So higher temperatures and the drying of the soils, increased pest and disease pressure, shifts in suitable areas of growing crops and livestock, increased desertification, floods, deforestation, erosion, and all signs that you can think about currently. In Nigeria, there are a lot of vulnerable areas you can't even imagine, and with the change of the climate and temperatures in our environment, a lot of things are happening, crises are falling, and the impact of the climate change will fall also disproportionately on the world's poorest countries, which is one of the countries is also Nigeria as well. So vulnerable and people already live on the front lines of pollution, disaster, and degradation of resources and land. For them, adaptation is a matter of sheer survival. As far as development is concerned, climate change will have a strong impact on Africa's ability to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, which is the SDGs, and on its policies in general. So through this, a lot of things can be adapted to. One of it should be through education and practical actions. People can contribute in different aspects for the climate change awareness, the adaptation and the mitigation. And youth should also be empowered, while children can also produce the vulnerability for themselves and of their communities and contribute to environmental stewardship. And there's also therefore the urgent need for educators and the future generation on the science of climate change to build their capacity towards practical application and the theory of climate change with their localities and the mitigation and adaptation of the strategies. It is also important to note that as agents of change, youths and schools, children can also assist in educating their peers in their various localities. This also helps that people who have already outgrown not understanding the as of impacts of the climate change in our societies, we people that already know about most of these issues can also help share our ideas and also help people create awareness for them to understand where climate change is affecting our societies, our environment, and the things that we can do as people to mitigate and help cope or hold the occurrence of different crises around different globes in the world. And if you were to see my slide, I had a picture shared about two sides of the world currently. The other side is showing how much we have so much dried up environment with having green leaf being dried up, and the other has more water, a clear sky, and also a growing leaf. So this is also to show you the impact of climate change in our society, but unfortunately, you're not seeing the screen, so I might not be able to explain better in the way you understand. I can only give you the overview of how it works. So right now, we'll be discussing climate change overview. And to understand what climate change really means, it is important to first differentiate between weather and climate. We all know weather is a state of atmospheric conditions in a particular place in time. Like, for example, in Abuja, you can see many instances where it could be raining in Kubwa, but it's not raining in Gwarimpa. And there are situations whereby it can also be raining in Gwarimpa. It's not in the same Gwarimpa, it can be raining in a particular region or place, but it's not raining in a different area. For example, in the same Gwarimpa, we all know is a particular same area, but because due to climate issues or due to weather, it can be atmospheric conditions that it can be raining in 2nd Avenue and it's not even raining in 1st Avenue, which are very close. But we all know due to atmospheric conditions, anything can happen in different places and depending on the atmospheric conditions that is infused into that particular area. So the most common aspects of weather are felt by everyone during the course of a day, which includes rain, humidity, sunshine, cloudiness, and temperature. So also includes extreme events such as tornadoes, also droughts, tropical cyclones, and different crises that might occur. Weather is a dynamic and can change within a very short period of time. And if you are even in the aviation industry, you understand that we work more when it comes to weather. We have to work with the weather to understand how, when, and how safe it is to fly in most of the cases. Because when we have extreme weather, because we use weather forecast to understand whether we have a very bad weather or something's going to happen in the next 2 hours and the next 1 hour, we tend to foresee that if it's going to rain, and we give it percentage of about 45 to 50%, which also includes or indulge that it's going to rain in those cases. But also, to have clear skies, which is also a very dynamic and very good weather, it's also another thing that can impact and can surely change within a minute or within 2 minutes. And like we said, the weather is something that cannot be guessed. Nobody can know what's going to happen in the next 1 hour and the next 2 hours. It's something that can change within a very short period of time. And now climate. Climate is a set of weather conditions prevailing in an area over a long time, typically 3 consecutive decades. We have the IPCC, which is 2007. The several factors that contributed in the definition of climate. This includes a long-time average of temperature and the precipitation, which also type the frequency, the duration, and the intensity of the weather. And such events such as heat waves, cold spells, storms, floods, and droughts can happen at any moment, and due to all this change in weather and climate at the same time. Climate change can therefore be deemed, in most cases, as a long-time change in the average weather patterns and have come to dance the arts local, regional, and global climates. This will also lead us to talk about the climate change and global warming at the same time. The climate change, or the Earth's climate, has always been in a constant state of change due to natural causes that include widespread of volcanic activity and the oscillations in the planet's rotational or orbital cycles. However, humans' activities are causing change differently, and in the temperatures across the globe, global temperatures have been increasing at much faster rates recently, and this is also previously, and it takes this longer. The term warming is caused by an anthropogenic, or more or less you can say the anthropogenic activities that are happening, and offers the composition and the global atmosphere. So most or less, the more we allow this as climate change to keep happening, which it will be drawing or will be causing more of global warming in the atmosphere. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hope you can see the screen now.
Okay, you guys are sharing the screen, right? Are you sharing the screen now? Okay, yes. So yes. We also have reports on climate change, which I might not be able to cover a lot from, but just say a little from the reports. The climate change in Nigeria also know is already changing, and the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, which is the NIMET, 2008 assessed the Nigerian climate over the period of 1941 to 2000, and the demonstrated alterations have been observed in rainfall and temperature patterns across the country, and this has impacted different sectors over the past decade. There has been a decrease in rainfall in the Savannah and the Sahel regions. We all know how much it has affected Africa, which is the Sahelian regions, mostly the eastern part of Africa, and the increase in rainfall in the mangrove and rainforest regions, which also takes us to talk about rainfall, which we know most of part of the country experienced the combination of late onsets. It caused dry spell and early condensation, which shortened the length of the rainy season in those parts of the country. Some parts of the country also often receive intensive rainfall, which causes flooding. And then temperature, this is the evidence of a long-time temperature increase in the most part of the country. The most significant increase are the recorded in the extreme northern part of Nigeria, where I come from, and climate change impact on the following areas, also in Nigeria. We also have the livelihood. The climate alterations endanger the means of livelihood and nutrition of the nation. It affects livelihood activities of farmers as well as workers in every sectors. The negative impacts felt in the various sections of the Nigerian economy due to climate change has led to the loss of income for many. Then we also have agriculture to talk about. Agriculture has been immensely altered by climate change. We all know that, as both crop cultivation and livestock rearing have been impacted by farming in Nigeria. And it's also largely rain-fed. Therefore, the variability in the onset of the rainfall in recent times often leads to a minimal harvest in areas lacking most of the irrigation system, food production, and which is also greatly reduced in the recent times. And we are now going to talk about the climate change mitigation, since we're done with the introduction to climate change. So climate change mitigations, these are majorly what I call the solutions to climate change. In most cases, climate change mitigation refers to the solutions that are targeted at reducing or preventing the release of greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. Also, the solutions aim to increase carbon sequestration, carbon storage. Also, there are various strategies to climate change mitigation, which can and being applied globally in various economic systems. Climate change mitigation can involve steps which are simple or complex, most depending on the climate actors, more or less. It can also involve making amendments to old technology, using new efficient and ecology, and changing the management or consumer behavior. In this chapter, you will also learn more about the climate change mitigation in the following fields: the energy, agriculture, tree planting, and waste management. We know that energy also plays a very vital role in our climate action. Climate change and mitigation in the energy sector involves the use of efficient technologies, reduction in the use of fossil fuels, as well as conservation of energy. And under agriculture, we know that climate change mitigation through agriculture has to do with implementing of agricultural practices, which will help increase carbon segregations and also reduce the release of greenhouse gases like nitrogen oxide, methane, and the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, definitely. So farming also in many cases helps in the absorption, or should I say the word, holding and segregating more or less anything that has to do with climate affecting our environment. So more or less, but sadly enough, most cases we only get to farm once in a blue moon. That also means that we only farm when it's raining season. And that is also beginning to reduce in most cases, because more or less when we farm only during that time, the rain is starting to really, really reduce in a large quantity. And sometimes it doesn't even take long before we get the rainfall and all that. And then we have the agroforestry, which is the under it, we also have under agriculture, we have agroforestry, we have organic farming, we have also waste management. Waste management are products of different materials, some of which release greenhouse gases when broken down. Waste can be identified as one of the contributions, and the greenhouse gases for the atmosphere. These contributions are made by both solid and liquid waste of industrial domestic processes. We also have tree planting. Tree planting is a low-cost alternative to reducing the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. Trees can take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during photosynthesis and then store it in a biomass. Therefore, they serve as a store carbon that can help reduce anthropogenic carbon emissions for the atmosphere. So in most cases, we all know planting of trees helps in so many situations that we can't even imagine, even though it's so hard for some certain people to do that. But in many ways, as we go further, you understand that planting of trees doesn't really require a lot of effort, but it only needs you to understand where and when it's best to plant a tree and then harvest it. And then it will help in many ways you can imagine around your localities or environment in most cases. So still under climate change mitigation, we also have the climate change solutions that are of two main approaches, the mitigation and the adaptation. So climate change mitigation refers to steps and strategies which can be taken to reduce greenhouse emissions, as said already, and also increase in the carbon storage. Mitigation can be done through simple and complex measures, such as planting of trees, like already mentioned, recycling of waste. That's things we use every day, but dump them. Instead of dumping them, there are many different ways we can carry these things and reuse them or make use of them in order for them to serve a different purpose, apparently. And then we also have the efficient use of energy, which is basically most of the energies we use, mobile using, cars, all this, anything that has to do with energy, more or less, if we can find ways to use them in a different way, or should I say use them lesser than the usual that we always use them, it would take on run in a high, many ways we can't even imagine. So multiple mitigation techniques also exist in the agricultural sector, which can help reduce the emissions of carbon dioxide, the methane, and the nitrous oxide. Then we also have the conclusions now. Like I said, I'm going to be fast as much as I can, so I'll be able to be done. We are looking for a more environmental friendly model, and Africa is already known to be facing impacts on climate change, particularly in droughts and desertification and flooding. Therefore, we have to adjust and adapt to the current environment we find ourselves. To do this, we must change our ways, and we need to be climate smart in our agricultural practices. We need to conserve scarce water and resources. We need to plant many trees, and we have to plan effectively for expected climate change related hazards, which also doing this will help improve our income in many ways. Okay, the next slide. The next slide. Okay, so we as the humans, or basically as climate actors, as people who tend to try to find ways to see how we can help pull back climate or global warming or climate issues, I could share with you some basic ways to reduce these carbon footprints, which are also as simple as they can be. Also, the whole slide now is broken into pieces whereby to help you really understand how you can, in your own way, create issues or create tactics or strategies in many ways you can reduce the occurrence of climate change. And one of them is switch up your appliances when not in use. In your houses, we know a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm still using this thing, so there is no point in switching off the devices or appliances in my own. But when you are not using them, just switch them up.
Hello, guys. Can you still hear the speaker? I think it's like.
I think
I can't
the
hear the
network
speaker.
Yeah, I
I
say.
think the network logged him off.
Yeah.
Oh, but I think he can rejoin, right?
Yeah.
Yes, he can. Yes, he can.
Okay.
So good morning, everyone. Let's get our questions ready so that he's already at the concluding part, so that when he comes in, we can he can tackle those questions and give us some responses.
And our question should be brief and precise. You know, we have second guest speaker waiting for us. Yeah.
So as we wait for him to come back in, yeah, just to take over from where he stopped. So like this is his last slide. He was the basic things that we can do to like help climate change. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Okay, that's fine. So switching off our appliances when not in use. Yeah, that's his first option. That could be very hard as we are always on our phones, but immediately you want to go to bed or work or something, you can switch off your appliances. Okay, our guest speaker is back on. Hello, Ali.
So sorry,
Hello.
everyone. I didn't know you lost me for a minute. I couldn't catch up. Are you listening to me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome back.
Okay, thank you. So I was talking about which of the basic ways before you lost me.
Switching off.
Switching off your appliances. You were just starting.
Okay, you're using appliances. That's the number
Yeah.
2. Okay. So switching off your appliances at home helps a lot in many ways you can't even imagine. As long as you're not home or you're not using them, just switch them off. It helps save a lot of stress, helps solve a lot of risk management and stuff like that. And the next one is shower instead of bathing. I know this might sound pretty funny for you people or for all of us, most of us here who like to take bath instead of shower, but in most cases, it helps with the emission of the temperature within your body and many ways you can't even imagine. And the next one is use renewable energy resources. So in most cases today, we live in an environment whereby we love to generate power in different atmosphere. And in that case, I would advise that you use more of renewable energy like the solar systems instead of things that you have to generate power from. And the next one is to use only what you need. Still almost the same thing with the one we just talked about right now, which is also if you have things around your environment that you're not using, whether bags, whether clothes or stuff, just dispose them, get rid of them. They are more or less making your environment stuffy. You might not even feel it that way. You might not even think about it in that aspect or manner. But in many ways, you can imagine this thing tends to create stuffy environment. And the more stuffy environment, the more temperature it gets through there. And in many cases, it poses risks to your health, to everyone around you as well who lives in that particular environment. And then the next one is use only public transport. I know it's hard for a lot of people, but public transport helps to reduce the amount of mobiles we have on the road. whether you see it that way or not, but it does. Look, imagine today if we say, for people who live in Abuja will understand what I'm saying, or in Lagos, if we are to make use of more public transport than mobile, we realize that we have lots of lesser mobiles on the road than the usual or than what we already have, which is also going to push us to understanding that if more or less the law of the roadworthiness for cars or vehicles is applied for us today, we realize that we will definitely have lesser cars, because a lot of cars are definitely not qualified to be on the road. So basically, it also tends to create a very stuffy environment. And a lot of people can attest to that, because when you're in a car and there's too much traffic, you get suffocated. And then you'd find that you kept wondering why there's too much stuffy environment, or there's too much temperatures rising and all that. But it's also due to this manner. That's why they're advising that always use public transport, because that will help create a more safer environment. Work and recycle. Yes, a lot of people know that it's good to work and exercise. Yeah, but truthfully, I will still add this. Walk a lot. It really helps with your body system. And then cycle a lot. This is one of the best exercises you can ever do with yourself, which is cycling. And this also will also help reduce the amount of, this will also help. Okay, I'm seeing questions. I don't know if I can treat them immediately. I'm done. Hello?
You can finish up first and then attend to the
So,
question afterwards, please.
So, and then we have eat lesser meats. Well, we love to eat meat, definitely, but eat lesser meat. That's why I didn't say do not eat meat, because then not everybody will be like, how will I stop eating meat and all that? So yeah, but eat lesser meat. It helps with your body system as well, and it helps to avoid lots of risks posing to your body system and all that. And then plant trees. We already talked about this. So planting of trees doesn't really have to be, you're thinking about how will I plant a big tree? So it doesn't have, you don't have to think about it that way. There are a lot of people who are always volunteering to go in many environments to try and, plant trees. So like I say, it doesn't have to be something that you feel you can be anywhere within your environment, anywhere necessary. But these trees help to cope the issues of drought. It helps to cope the issue for now, the future, and even the past. Basically, there's an interconnection between these trees that brings to us or save us or create a safer environment for people. So the more trees we have, the more chances of life continuing or sustainability we have. And the lesser trees we have, the more chances of extinction life has. So you see, there's sort of a connection there that really requires that the world really build more trees wherever we find ourselves. I know the world we're growing into, a lot of people feel like trees can actually be dirtying the environment and all that, but that is not the issue here. Trees are actually life. They give life, however we may not want to see it, but they give us life in many ways you can imagine, from the past to the present and to the future. They are quite very, very much connected. So the next one is to use recycled papers. So in many cases, we can always reuse papers instead of dumping them, because the more you dump them, the more they become waste and the more they pollute our environment. So please do more of recycling papers. And if you're not using them, I don't really advise more or less always burning them, because that is also emitting a lot of gases in the environment. So yeah, just recycle papers. And then the next one is switch off taps when not using water. The bottom line here is that we're trying as much as possible to avoid more or less floats in many aspects of the environment. So imagine if you let a tap open and you forgot, basically, more or less you forgot, and then it keeps on flowing and then it starts filling up your environment or your home, more or less, and it keeps on going, and then, and more or less, it's also like degrading the quality of the building in your homes, more or less. You might never see it that way, but the more water is beating it, the more it's, getting lesser and lesser quality. And the next one is eat organic and locally grown food. Today, sadly enough, we all love to go to eateries and eat more of snacks and stuff like that. But we might never understand this. I don't want to be biased in this way, but there's a reason why people of those days live longer than we do today, because we eat a lot of conservative food. And that also tends to degrade our age in most cases. And no matter how we see it, it's also affecting our health and growth. And you'll find out that people, when they start growing to an older age, they tend to get sicknesses like cancer and stuff like that. So eat more or less locally grown food. Eat fruits. Fruits are basic food that you need in your body system. It helps keep you healthy. It helps avoid a lot of crises in your system. And things you can't even imagine. And the last one, but not the least, but what I just have to share is catch rainwater in tanks and bowls. This also has to do with the switching of taps and not also using water. This, in this case, is people might be like, how would we catch rainwater? But what I'm going to say about this is that in your homes, you know, rain tend to fall a lot. And when you are not really packing this water in tanks or bowls, it tends to, you know, fill up the home. And if not care is not taken, it might end up flooding the environment or your home at large. And we all know what that could lead to and stuff. And it can also degrade the building, like I mentioned. So thank you so much for your time. And I hope I've done
Thank
justice
you
to
very
it.
much. Thank you very much, Mr. Eliabas. So quickly, just to go, like, you quickly have to answer these questions for us.
Yeah.
The first one being, how can consumption of meat lead to weather change? That's from Aminu. Please, you quickly give a response to that.
It's not about the weather change, it's about your health issue. Basically, the more meat you eat, the more, I don't want to use the word obesity, but I have to. So it causes a lot of obesity, and that also, you know, affects the environment of people around you. When you are so obese, you know, what that tends to create in the environment. Wherever you find yourself, you tend to, you know, create a space or an uncomfortable state for the people who are basically, and for your own body at large. Because when your body is too obese, you will not be able to, you know, do a lot of things in the environment, and you yourself poses a lot of risk to your own self. So basically, that's more reason why they say do not eat a lot of meat, because it causes obesity. It causes you to get fat, you know, and causes a lot of risk inside your body, basically.
Okay, thank you very much. And
Good morning.
secondly, the second question is, how can you convince a religious fanatic that climate change is real because they don't seem to believe in climate change?
Well, it's not really about them understanding what climate change is, but showing them the effects and the causes of the climate change. It's not always about trying to convince them that, oh, it's, you know, you have to show them that this is what is happening. And if we don't do this, or care is not taken, this is what is going to occur in our environment. You can use data, or you can use instances of where it has already happened and tell them, if we're not careful, this can also happen in our environment. So these are the steps to take. And if they are not taking those steps, you have to take those steps. That's why we are called the climate actors. We don't have to wait for people to believe that so is going to happen to the earth. That's why you find out that we are climate actors, because we tend to take these decisions on ourselves, because people, or shall I say, art is not believing that art is not safe anymore. So that's more reason why, as climate actors, you have to take those decisions as a leader to work towards those things, to be on the forefront of fixing your environment. So be the inspirator, or be the one who inspires people to make change, basically.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Eliabas. We are really grateful. So we are going to quickly move on to our next speaker. So you could please drop your LinkedIn link on the chat so that anybody that wants to follow up with you can do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well. Thank you for me.
Thank you. We are going to move on to our next speaker right now. Sally, are you here?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please introduce our next speaker so we can get right into it. Thank you.
All right. Okay, let me share my screen.
Okay, Seman, can you introduce our next speaker? Thank you.
Okay, this is the screen, and I'd like to welcome Mr. Aziz Abakar, a sustainability project manager and consultant, founder, CEO, Sustainable Solutions for Green Growth, certified lead green associate, and a global citizen fellow, winner of 2022 World Bank Group Youth Summit Case Challenge, and etc. Welcome, Mr. Aziz Abakar.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Good day, good afternoon, good morning, rather. Because I attend a lot of events that like involve other people from other countries. So I'm so used to saying good day, good afternoon, good night, and good evening. So I just remember that this is a national event within the country. So I would just say good morning. It's still morning here. So how is everyone doing? My name is Aziz, just as has been introduced already. I'm the founder of the Sustainable Solutions for Green Growth. I'm also a Youthopia Circle of Youths member and also a global shaper. And as you mentioned already, I'm a lead green associate, which is a leadership in energy and environmental design certification given to green building professionals. So let's proceed, but very quickly, I'm going to talk about all of these different things during my presentation. I'll be delving into the social economic context and the policy strategies of climate change briefly. I would also be talking about the Great Green Wall Initiative from the global perspective, and talking about it from the national perspective as well within Nigeria, and then looking at the interrelationship between the social economic policies of climate change and the Great Green Wall. And I'll then open for questions and comments from the audience. But just quickly jumping to introduce my organization before I move forward. The Sustainable Solutions for Green Growth is a youth-led non-governmental organization based here in Nigeria, and we've been creating change in 2020. And basically, we're doing that by finding sustainable solutions to some of the climate and sustainability challenges at the grassroots through innovation, technology, and policy and advocacy methods. And what we've been doing is to build community resilience through capacity building and also providing resources to support communities. So I will talk now about the social economic context of climate change. Now, our previous speaker has already spoken about climate change. It has introduced everybody to what climate change is. But now I will be looking at the social economic, meaning there are two things here involved, which is the social and also the economy. So I'll be looking at the social economic context of climate change, how that is affecting communities, societies, and the impact it has on the economy. So one very key thing to note here is that the vulnerable communities are the most affected by climate change. When you look at climate change is a global challenge affecting the entire world. But however, the rate at which it's affecting different communities across the world is different because different communities have certain levels of development that they've already achieved. Nigeria is not as developed as the US. Nigeria does not have certain infrastructure to deal with, the socio-economic impact of climate change, the direct impact of climate change like flooding, drought, and desertification, which we face across different regions in Nigeria. So this poses a lot of inequality, which I will also talk about very soon. When you look at it, there's a global inequality happening because of countries that have historically polluted the environment for a very long time, like the US and, big countries like China and, and some other countries like Russia and the likes, have polluted the community for so long, such that the pollution has now resulted in the impact that we're feeling today in developing countries in the global south. Countries like Nigeria, countries like Senegal, and quite a lot of other countries in Africa. So, and also even outside Africa as well, in Latin America as well. So you can also see that, I mentioned that the issue of the global inequality that comes from climate change, and the major things to look at is the fact that there is this power dynamics coming to play because the global political system across the world there's a dynamic to it because we have conferences like the UN climate change conferences whereby negotiations take place. However, the power dynamics in those conferences are very different, because you see developed countries that historically pollute will come, and then they would say they will do X thing, and then they won't do it. They will make X promises to developing countries, to global south countries, and they won't do it, right? So that's the power dynamics I'm talking about. And this play a key role in when you look at those that are the most impacted and those that are responsible for climate change. Then you'd also see something like a transition that is not just. So we need to look more into a just transition, right? A just transition. What do I mean by that? I mean that when we're considering moving from let's say kerosene stoves to clean cooking stoves, then we must think about the affordability of that for the most common household. How can they afford it? And then you must also think about what it might mean to the livelihoods of people who live in the most vulnerable communities or marginalized communities in developing countries like Nigeria. Like, for instance, a woman, the only source of income for a household is to sell firewood, and the woman who is selling the firewood has 4 children or 5 children or even 6 children. And you say, okay, because we want to transition to a much more greener economy, then the woman needs to stop selling firewood. What then would be our source of income? So we must think about a just transition. For those that are very conversant about climate change and the energy transition plan in Nigeria, would probably know already that Nigeria already has an energy transition plan, and within the plan there is a laid out way to actually achieve net zero and a just transition. So we must think about things like this while integrating or developing solutions for local communities. We must ensure that the transition is just and it creates more green job opportunities for low-income earners in their communities. Then there is also the policy strategies aspect of this. So when it comes to renewable energy, which I mentioned earlier, renewable energy, we need to think about policies that tend to subsidize renewable energies for low-income earners, because low-income earners, in the true sense, we need to look at how affordable all these clean energy sources are, and then develop subsidies to help low-income earners to afford those renewable energy solutions. Like, for instance, now, how many low-income earners who earn, let's say, $5 a day or even less than that? How affordable is it for them to purchase a solar panel that worth up to let's say $1,000 US? So that's unrealistic, right? So that's why we need to develop solutions like renewable energy subsidies, and also think about innovative financing solutions like a pay-as-you-go, an integrated pay-as-you-go financial solution. Pay-as-you-go is a solution that has been working recently in the renewable energy space for a lot of low-income earners, meaning that they can purchase and pay for renewable energy as on a monthly basis or as they are using it. Some of them can also opt in for an installment payment, and they will have access to the renewable energy sources right away. They won't have to wait until when they are done paying. They can access the renewable energy right away. So these are innovative solutions. These are innovative policy strategies that the government needs to put in place in order to actually promote low carbon energy sources within the country. The other point I wanted to make is the carbon markets. the carbon markets for some time now hasn't really been tapped into. I think particularly in African countries, because can you still follow me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, so the carbon market hasn't really been tapped into, particularly in African countries, because we still haven't developed, we've not developed trading frameworks and trading systems yet. However, I think Nigeria is working on developing a carbon trading framework whereby for every home or for every house that actually offsets their own carbon, for instance, if you are able to measure the amounts of emissions you're able to reduce in your home by maybe using a solar panel instead of a generator, and you can provide evidence and proof of that, you can actually earn carbon credits on it. And when you earn carbon credits, you can earn them in money. You can convert them into money, meaning that you can sell your carbon credits to polluters who need those carbon credits to offset their own emissions. So it's a huge opportunity, it's a potential, and it's a potential policy strategy that the government could leverage as well in helping to reduce carbon emissions ultimately. In the past, I've seen things like, the petroleum bill to reduce, gas flaring. However, these bills that have been passed in Nigeria hasn't really been very effective. And the fact that they've not also implemented these bills, like the bills are there, but they are not enforcing it because, big oil companies, especially those from outside the country, Shell and the likes, they come and they continue to exploit and they continue to avoid paying the needed due, because the bill states that some aspect of it was talking about how big polluters should pay for every amount of carbon they are emitting. So this is something that hasn't really been put into practice properly in Nigeria. It hasn't really been enforced, and I don't think that they are really taking it as seriously as they should. But these are potential strategies that we could leverage. And there is also regulations. Regulations can come in different form. This can come in terms of international agreement, like, for instance, the Paris Agreement is a good example of an international agreement. Other kinds of agreement that have been done in the past that I know of is, the Kyoto Protocol. Some of you may have heard of that. There are also other kinds of agreements that come after every conference of parties that happen, hosted by different countries. Like the one that is being hosted this year is going to be hosted by the United Arab Emirates. The one that was hosted last year was hosted by the Egyptian government. So every conference or party event has an international agreement that comes out of it. Like the one before Egypt was in Glasgow, United Kingdom, and the agreement was the Glasgow Climate Pact. The one that came out from Egypt was called the Sharm el-Sheikh Implementation Agreement, which was more focused on implementation of climate strategies in different countries. And last year we successfully agreed to providing loss and damage fund and creating a financing mechanism for loss and damage. You might have all been hearing loss and damage. The battle to actually bring about the loss and damage fund has been a long fight battle, but only until last year this was realized. So regulations like this need to come to play. And like I said in my previous slide, I mentioned something about the global inequality and power dynamics. It took that long before we could even achieve the climate adaptation fund. Now it took even more time to achieve loss and damage fund. So these are things that come out of the political and power dynamics that I'm talking about, whereby developed countries use their political power to overthrow developing countries, and they don't. There's a huge global trust that happens between the global north countries and the global south countries, because they don't fulfill on their promises most times when they make it. So there is also other strategies like the adaptation action. We can also take climate adaptation strategies, particularly in Nigeria, because we are dealing with the reality of climate change now, not later. We're dealing with it now. We're already seeing frequent, every rain falls. We're already experiencing droughts. We're already experiencing desertification. Our lands are becoming barren, and we can't continue to live like this. So we need to find a way to adapt to these realities that we currently face. And that is why we need to adopt policies that are focused on adaptation and resilience building. And then, so now I would also talk about the Great Green Wall. The Great Green Wall is actually an African-led movement that aims to plant an 8,000-kilometer long wall of trees across the Sahel region. So an interesting fact about this Great Green Wall is that it has been raised in the past. It was raised in the 1970s, and because of, for one reason or the other, it didn't gain any momentum. There was no support from it. There was no support for it. I mentioned power dynamics, right? Power dynamics also came to play here, whereby maybe the developing countries raised it, but maybe the developed countries did not see any opportunity for them there, and they decided to find a way to just bring it down. So, but however, in 2007, the African Union officially and formally they endorsed this project, and since then the project has gained a lot of traction and a lot of momentum, and also a lot of international partners that have supported the project. And you would have seen, you can see here that I stated that more than 15% of the planned area that was meant to be restored has already been restored. So over 11 million hectares of land has already been restored with trees. You can see this image here is just showing you what it looks like. This is a satellite image from space, and it's showing the forest cover across. You can see that this region is a bit deserted. You can see the kind of soil that is there initially, right? But with the trees, it's now restoring the soil, is making the soil more water retaining, and also is making sure that food security is assured in those regions. And so far, this project has not been completed yet. It's only 15% that has been restored. There's still about 85% left to be covered. And this project is estimated to take decades to complete. It's a long-term project. However, this project has already been shown the amount of economic impact, social economic impact that it could have on this community. Like for the regions in Senegal, all the way to Ethiopia, which is the region where the Great Green Wall project is happening, all the way from Senegal, 11 countries from Senegal to Ethiopia. Of all these regions are already experiencing the social economic impact of the project, and they are already witnessing increased food security, reduction in migration, climate migration, and also there is now improved soil health. The soil is now getting better. So then Nigeria. What is Nigeria's role in the Great Green Wall initiative? Nigeria is located in the West Africa, as you all know already. We have a population of over 200 million people, particularly located in the northern region of Nigeria. And Nigeria is one of the 11 countries. As I mentioned, 11 countries are involved in the Great Green Wall, all the way from Senegal across. If you look at the map of Africa, if I take you back to the map of Africa here, you can see this map. So all the way across from all the way from Senegal in the west. I don't know if you can see my pointer, my cursor, but all the way from Senegal here, all the way down. It's also cut across Nigeria. Yeah, it also cut across Nigeria. Yeah, Nigeria. This is where Nigeria is. So it's cut across Nigeria here, all the way down to Ethiopia. So that is the Great Green Wall, all the way. So it's a wall of trees, lots of trees, like as you can see in this image here, lots of trees. I'll show you the image now. Lots of trees like this, lots of trees. So it's a wall, and Nigeria is one of the countries that are involved. There are lots of countries involved. There is Mali, Senegal, lots of countries, right, within West Africa and all the way across to Ethiopia. And so far in Nigeria, over 40 million hectares of degraded land are meant to be restored in Nigeria as part of the Great Green Wall. Meaning that if you look back to the map of Nigeria, you can see that this map, if you look at this map now, I will use my cursor to show you. So if you look at this map now, so this is where Nigeria is, this area like this. So Nigeria, the area that needs to be covered, to be restored is this area. So there are all the states in this area, mostly northern states, Kano, Kaduna, Sokoto, all those states are part of the Great Green Wall, meaning that all the land in this area needs to be restored. Over 11 million hectares of land needs to be restored as part of the Great Green Wall. And Nigeria has actually been making good strides, good efforts in restoring those lands. And Nigeria has a national agency that is under the Ministry of Environment, the National Agency of the Great Green Wall. I even met the DG, the Director General of the Great Green Wall at CAAP. I told you about this annual events that happens that is hosted by different countries, the United Nations Climate Change Conference. So I met the Director General of the Great Green Wall, and he said a lot of things that we're actually working on for young people as well. He mentioned the fact that they're developing initiatives to make sure that their efforts are youth inclusive, meaning that there is a Great Green Wall Youth Champions program, and they recently even launched the Youth Volunteers program as well, meaning that young people in those states, the states in Nigeria that I told you that the lands are going to be restored, young people in those states, mostly northern states, would be involved as volunteers or can opt in to become volunteers as part of the program. I think if you go to the national, if you Google National Agency of the Great Green Wall, you will see their website. If you go to their website, you can see more information about the Youth Volunteers Program and also the Youth Champions Program. So Nigeria has actually made its own efforts in addressing and contributing to the Great Green Wall project. Now, looking at the social economic policies and the Great Green Wall, looking at it more broadly. Now, the social policies such as promoting sustainable agriculture and supporting climate research and education can help a lot in communities to adapt in changing climates. It is very key that we are able to promote sustainable agricultural practices, because agriculture is still one of the most mechanized industry in the world, and because of its mechanization, it's actually affecting the soil. We see that if we want to produce huge or mass amounts of grains and crops, we have to use tractors, we have to use different mechanized machines, and some of these machines, or even most of these machines, affect the soil. they help in, they depreciate the soil, they degrade the soil. So we need to develop sustainable machineries that would ensure that our efforts in achieving food security in Nigeria is green. That is, we're able to choose the green alternative rather than the polluting alternative. So, and a lot of support needs to also go into climate research. We need to look at, physical risk assessments, physical risk analysis and modeling in order to develop resilience models to address some of the challenges in the agriculture sector. I happen to even be working on a project around agriculture in Nigeria. It's a youth challenge whereby young people would conduct climate research in their institutes, working with their professors, and they would develop climate risk maps and models and recommendations for the governments to take, and also the international community to support in addressing the impacts of climate change on the agricultural sector. The economic policies such as green finance, investments, climate finance, climate fund, and all of that, they are very key in addressing land degradation. Definitely, we need to look more into adopting, or we need to find more ways to bring or advocate for green finance in developing nations. The recent loss and damage fund that was committed to at COP27, which is the 27th conference of parties on climate change, made a commitment on loss and damage fund. As part of this fund, I think that a lot of young people should be advocating for the restoration of lands, for more finance to restore lands, for more finance to get tree seedlings and plant as many trees as possible in degraded regions of developing countries across the world. And the Great Green Wall Project, so far, the relation that it has to do with the social economic policies is that the Great Green Wall has created a social economic approach to addressing the root causes of climate change, because apart from providing sustainable growth in those regions where trees are planted as part of the Great Green Wall, it has also addressed the root causes of climate change. That is, it has helped in reducing carbon emissions. Trees naturally help in absorbing carbon dioxide and release oxygen as its byproduct, meaning that the more trees we have, the lesser the carbon emissions. And this project ultimately has, even at its 15% completion, meaning that it has not even been full, it has not even gotten to 50% yet. It has already been helping to address the root causes of climate change. And I think that we should even have something like the Great Green Wall for the entire world, meaning that across the world, we should plant trees across the world, not just in Africa, because the potential that this project has is already being felt in this region of the world. And imagine if this is replicated in other regions of the world as well, like the Middle East or some other countries in Asia and the likes of the US. So the Great Green Wall initiative has gained a lot of international recognition. Like I mentioned, it's already been being supported by the World Bank, the European Commission, the European Union, and even the United Nations. That would be the end of my presentation. So if you have any questions or comments or answers to any other questions and all of that, just feel free to ask them now as I open the floor for questions and answers.
Okay, Mr. Aziz, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for coming to present. I don't know if this here is a question. Mr. Aziz, I don't know if you can see that. Hello?
Okay, I'm with you. In the chat, right? I will try to check the chat now.
Yes, in the chat.
Okay, please do drop your, okay. This was your message.
Okay, Shetima wrote, we have all witnessed arguments from opposing viewpoints regarding climate change. The mainstream media persistent focus on climate change isn't really trustworthy, especially with the manner in which government and mainstream media handled the COVID-19 pandemic. This has led most people to question the legitimacy of the claims made about climate change. I think this is rather like an input than a question. I don't know if anybody else has a question. Please quickly drop that in before we end this session.
Okay, but I think if you read till the end of it, it's actually a question. His question is, therefore, do you believe that the climate concerns being heavily promoted by the government and media are genuinely severe, or is the Earth merely undergoing a natural periodic weather cycle that occurs every 40 years or so?
Okay, so my response to that would be that the science of climate change is really clear and specific. If you know about the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that's the IPCC. So the IPCC is dedicated to research the climate changes that has been happening over years. And what we've seen is that weather patterns are changing, not just changing like on a daily basis, but it has been changing over a long period of time, which is what we're now calling climate change, right? Normally there will be rainfalls, right? There has always been rainfalls, but when you now start to notice the rainfalls over a long period of time is increasingly becoming heavier than it used to be, like 40 years or 50 years back, during the pre-industrial period. That is before we started industries, before we started manufacturing, industrialization and mass production and all of that. Before we started all these things, the normal, let me just put it as normal. The normal weather conditions were still pretty much in its, in a particular temperature that is sustainable for the world, that is actually fine for the planet. But if you look at now the global warming is already rising above the set targets that we've set as the targets to actually meet, right? Well, we initially set a target of meeting 1.5 degrees Celsius, right? And now, now we even feel like we can't achieve that before the deadline that we've set for ourselves, because we have set a deadline of 2030, and it's already 2023. We have just 7 years left. And so far, the research that I've seen around achieving this deadline has been that we would have to push this deadline forward, meaning that we can't achieve these sustainable development goals by 2030 anymore, right? So now the IPCC, like I mentioned, is an intergovernmental panel on climate change. So they basically informed political, policy makers on the current state of the planet in terms of climate change, in terms of global warming. And they create a report, I think on an annual basis. An IPCC report is being published to showcase the state of global warming in the world and what we need to do. Emphasis on what countries need to do in order to address climate change. And so far, I think the recent report still states that we still aren't on track in meeting our global targets of 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2030. And a lot of countries are still not on track in reaching their net zero commitments, meaning that we need to do more. We need to actually address, although to be honest with you, there are different countries that are leveraging the climate policy and the climate space as a way to actually galvanize funds for their own self-interest. There are different cases of that happen, right? But however, climate change is real. It is a reality for many communities currently. That's they are being flooded. There have been the only issue that I personally have identified based on my own research work in Nigeria has been that Nigeria, particularly, a lot of people worry more about meeting basic needs, such that we don't even know what climate change is. And whenever it rains heavily and someone lost or a family lost their home, or they lost their farm due to erosion and all of that, whenever all of these things happen, we don't even necessarily tie it to climate change. Sometimes we even tie it to poverty. And because of we are more worried about meeting basic needs, our countries are still developing, and we've not achieved climate resilience infrastructure yet. That's why I mentioned earlier in my presentation that there's a global inequality that is happening right now. Developed countries are able to deal with climate change better than us because they already have infrastructure in place to deal with it. They already have large canals and drainages built within their cities. They already have sewers and all of that. In Nigeria today, do we have things like sewers per se? No. We only have gutters, and gutters today are overflooded and they flood homes. So meaning that we don't have the infrastructure to deal with it. And it is inequality because the inequality comes out of the fact that we weren't even the ones that polluted the environment as this much to cause the historic warming that we're witnessing currently. It was developed countries who had already used us. Let me put it that way, because during colonialism era, developed countries came to developing countries, they colonized us, they took our people, they enslaved them, they had them build their coal mines, they had them build their coal industries, they had them build their...
Mr. Aziz, we should be rounding up. We have, I think, just about 2 minutes, and we have 2 questions more.
Yeah,
that's just be quick. Yeah. Thank you.
So just to cut that short, yeah, thank you. Just to cut that short, climate change is real and it's happening now. Yeah, thank you.
So, Mr. Aziz, you have like questions like starting from the last, does the climate change cause any disease? Please, you have to be as fast as possible because we're running out of time.
Yeah, sure. What was the question again? I'll try to answer it as
Does
quickly as possible.
climate change cause any disease?
Yes, there are climate health related. In fact, this is a sector that I'm looking into myself. I'm looking into the impact on climate change on the health vulnerability of local and marginalized communities. So yes, climate change causes a lot of health. In fact, I did an article recently on the impact of climate change on the health of communities in the northern region, in a community called Kona in Kano State. And what we've seen in that research was that due to increase in air temperature as a result of climate change, the community people now experience pulmonary diseases, that's lungs-related diseases, breathing challenges. They're not able to breathe well because of the air is hot, the air quality has reduced due to climate change. So yes, climate change does cause a lot of health risks.
Okay, then let's take these 2 questions. This one says, what is the status of carbon credit funds as regards Nigeria? Do we have any? Because that will encourage private participation. Then this other one, the second one, advocacy for use of renewable energy is very rapid in order to address the issue of climate change. But this is renewable energy such as solar is very expensive. So what is the government doing so that everyone can access the renewable? So let's just take these 2 questions and then round up. Then any other one, I can later.
Yeah, you can just email them and I'll try to answer them as much. So I will take it one by one. The first one is about the carbon credits and markets, right? So the truth of the fact is that there is ongoing conversations and ongoing plans in place for Nigeria to develop its own carbon trading framework. in last COP, there were discussions that were happening about carbon credits, but it's not something that is really concrete yet. But definitely, this is something that would, take a lot of, it's going to advance progress actually in terms of reducing national carbon emissions and NDCs and all of that. If you get what I'm saying. So now the second question, I would like you to read it again because it was a bit long.
Okay. He's just saying that what is the government doing so that everyone can access the renewable energy such as solar, because it's very, very expensive. Since now we want to move to renewable energy to reduce carbon.
Okay, so the government has an agency called the Rural Electrification Agency, REA of Nigeria, REAN, and the agency does have a program called the NEP program. That's the Nigerian Electrification Project, and this project has been helping a lot of rural communities to actually access solar energy. This project is running on a private-public partnership model, a 3P model, whereby private sectors organizations come to bid for the project with the REA, and then the REA provides the budgets or the funding to the private sector organizations to implement the project. So we've seen, mini grids, done in rural communities across Nigeria, especially even in the northern region. There are lots of mini grids in small communities, and it's been creating access to solar energy. However, we can do better. We can do more. The efforts are ongoing. However, we need to do more. We need to scale up all of these efforts. I do know the REA is also doing something around electrifying the schools, universities across Nigeria. I think about 20 universities or so. I'm not sure, but they want to electrify, don't build solar grids in government universities across Nigeria, and also run capacity building for students to learn more about. They also want to build a renewable energy hub, a facility within these universities where students can also learn about renewable energy and installations and all of that. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Aziz, thank you so very much for your deep explanatory session. We are really grateful for you coming up to, advise us and then teach us. Thank you very much. For further questions, you can see his contact showing on the screen. He's sharing it right now. Mr. Aziz, you can also drop your LinkedIn link on the chat so that people can add you up and then ask you further questions and connect with you. Thank you everybody for showing up. Thank you for asking very important questions. Thank you very much.
All right, then I think that's the end of the session. For those that have further questions, just try to channel it to me, then I'll forward it to him, then I'll forward it back to you. Thank you very much. We all really appreciate. Have a lovely day.